Okay, I just did it. All right. So my name is Sally Jones. I'm the chair of Peace Action Fund of New York State. We are the affiliate, the New York State affiliate of National Peace Action. And we have 12 community chapters around the state, plus we're doing student organizing on 24 campuses right now. Of course, that's been remote since the March shut down. So the title of this webinar is New York State and U.S. Wars. That picture is from Brooklyn. So the U.S. wars have recently been more domestic, have had a domestic presence, as we all know, with the demonstrations, and we'll talk more about that. I want to start out with asking some questions. What do New Yorkers pay for U.S. wars? Are U.S. wars launched from New York State? Are U.S. weapons made in our state? And what's happening now in terms of the whole defense contracting and military spending? Why can't we rein it in? What has to change? What steps should Congress be taking, and what steps can we take? So the first question, what do we pay for U.S. wars here in our state? We pay about 11% of the military budget. So for the 2018 military budget of $712 billion, we paid about $62 billion. And the National Priorities Project, which I know many of you are aware of, does this wonderful trade-off where you can try to understand what $62 billion translates to in terms of what could be useful for our society. It could translate to 611,000 elementary school teacher jobs, 842 clean energy jobs, and over 1 million infrastructure jobs. And you can go yourself to the National Priorities Project and look for other trade-offs. Second question, are U.S. wars launched from New York State? Well, yes, they are. We have 12 military installations in New York State, and they are all over the state. Some of us are more familiar with some than others. The Hancock Air Force Base in near Syracuse is someplace that I know some people on this call have been to protesting the drone warfare. And some may not be as well known, but they're all the way from Niagara Falls, all the way across to Syracuse, over to the Albany area, down Hudson River. We have the Stewart Air Force Base in Newburgh, and down, of course, West Point and in Brooklyn. We have the Fort Hamilton and a recruiting battalion. Hancock Air Force Base is a place that's been in the news, especially with the war on terror. Air National Guard bases have been switching from traditional aircraft to drones. That's a picture of a soldier training on drone equipment, and on the right is a picture of a Reaper drone that is operated from Hancock. In Afghanistan, there have been over 4,000 airstrikes and almost 4,000 killings by drone, including civilians and children. Okay, next question. Are U.S. weapons made in New York State? Well, yes, they are. And it isn't that easy to find out where all these military contracts are in our state. This list comes from actually a New York State site trying to attract businesses to New York State. They mentioned Northrop Grumman, Schweitzer Aircraft, GE Engine Services, BAE Systems Controls, L3 Communications, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon. And if you look, I looked at where are these contractors operating. It is in small towns all over our state. I didn't know where all these towns are, so you on the call may know more about some of these towns than others. But you can see they're in upstate, they're in the Capital Districts area, they're over by Buffalo, they're on Long Island, they're in New York City. And one way I tried to find out where they were is look for jobs, job searches, and where these jobs are, where they say these jobs are for these companies on job sites. But I think it would be a great project for us to get a real database of all the weapons contractors. Of course, it changes year to year, and there's so many mergers, and it's a huge amount of money going to military contractors. Since Trump became president, just in the first year, the military budget was increased by $100 billion. It was a military spending binge, and New York firms benefited from this. There is one in particular, SRC Inc., that wasn't on the previous list. They're based in Syracuse, and they were awarded almost $400 million in contracts and were part of a consortia that was awarded $45 billion more. They were founded as a project of Syracuse University in 1957. And on their website, it says they are a not-for-profit. I think that's something very interesting. When they were awarded that contract, this is what our senator said, Senator Schumer. This Army contract is yet another shot in the arm for the central New York economy and further indication that SRC's workforce produces top quality products that the Department of Defense relies on to succeed in some of the toughest missions around the globe. And on their website, their motto is, any domain, any adversary. Jack Gilroy's on the call, and he organized 18 activists to meet with Senator Schumer's office. We met with his military aide, and this is what we heard from the military aide. First of all, the Senate is constrained under this Trump administration, we were told. We could question that because even under any kind of administration, we have been constrained as far as the Pentagon spending is concerned. What the senator can do, according to the aide, is that he can continue to assure there is parity between defense and non-defense spending. He can try to prevent the military from transferring money between accounts, for example, to build the wall at the border with Mexico. He can press for restrictions that affect our drinking water, such as in the Hudson Valley with military operations affecting drinking water, such as the chemical PFOS, which has been found and is a real problem there. He also said he would press the Department of Defense to mitigate the effects of climate change. He would not answer questions. I know Jack asked him this. He would not answer questions on whether he would refuse contributions from weapons manufacturers such as Lockheed Martin. Okay, so what's happening now? Every year, the National Defense Authorization Act comes before Congress. This authorizes money to be spent for the military. The Senate has already marked up the NDAA. This year, it was done in secret. The House is in the process or going to be marking it up. The process has been delayed because of the difficulty of meeting during the COVID pandemic. 29 House Democrats wrote a letter saying that they would not vote for the NDAA unless there were cuts in Pentagon spending. We are expecting some good amendments to be made to the NDAA this year, but there's going to be less than usual because they don't want to have so many amendments because of the difficulty in voting with the COVID and how getting people together is so difficult. Trump is asking for a 2021 budget of a total of $1.3 trillion. That, and 55% of it is being earmarked for the military. 55%, that's $741 billion. Of that, $69 billion goes to what they call the Overseas Contingency Operations, OCO, or the slush fund, which is supposed to be used for unplanned military operations. It's been used for everything, but the kitchen sink, actually. And there are serious calls for it to be eliminated. And then just to put things in perspective, in the 2018 military budget of $732 billion, that was equal to the next 10 countries' military budgets, all combined. That includes China, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Germany, United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, and Brazil. It's just pretty shocking that amount of money and how much we spend. And if you add in all the defense spending, it is over $1 trillion. If you add in the $100 billion on military pensions that the Treasury Department comes out of the Treasury Department budget, and $243 billion for Veterans Affairs. And then just another fact that I kind of just shocks me is that 50% of our military budget goes to private contractors. Plus, our tax dollars pay to militarize our local police departments. And this money comes from more than the Department of Defense. The Department of Justice is involved, Homeland Security, the Department of Agriculture. And the Department of Defense has this very controversial program called 1033, which I'm sure you've heard about because it's been brought up in conversations with all of the anti-police brutality, anti-racism protest. Surplus military equipment has gone out to law enforcement agencies all over the United States. And some of these are very serious types of equipment, including these mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles, bayonets, grenade launchers, etc. New York has received $33.2 million in surplus military equipment, according to the government site, which includes armored vehicles, interestingly enough. So just getting ourselves another number, since the war on terror started after 9/11, the U.S. has spent $6.4 trillion. The Brown University Cost of War Study is a great resource. I recommend it. And it shows that this money was from the DoD budget, their regular base budget, plus this slush fund OCO budget, Homeland Security, Veterans Care, and the interest on the money that was spent. Another question for us, why can't we rein this spending in? This is not new. This has been going on for decades. We have made very little progress in reining in Pentagon spending. We all know this. And I thought that Bill Hartong's article with the same name, tried to address that. We have an ideology in our country that's, you know, sort of steeped in our culture of a doctrine of armed exceptionalism, which is amped up by fear, fear of terror, fear of communism. Now maybe it's going to be fear of China. And also we have some excellent, very effective lobbying, excellent in the terms of very effective, by the Pentagon, the arms lobby, and all of its allies. It's a very serious amount of lobbying goes on. If you go to Congress doing lobbying in DC, you see a lot of people in uniform and visiting the same offices you're visiting. But one of the things that I think is most effective in terms of keeping the Pentagon budget high is the economic dependency caused by the strategic placement of facilities in key districts. And this is not just the military installation, this is the military contractors. And we can see that in our own state. So what has to change? We need a cultural shift away from this fear, greed, hubris. We need a clear-eyed assessment of what constitutes defense and how much money it would take to provide it. And that's what we're all about, trying to really change the culture and have a real good discussion about what is defense. So what steps should Congress be taking now? You know, we are in a moment right now. Is it possible for us to do some pressing during this moment when they're talking about demilitarizing the police and the amount of money that's going to the Pentagon? Should it be going to help the COVID pandemic, help the people affected by it? So here are some steps. Barbara Lee has introduced a resolution 1003 that resolves to cut wasteful Pentagon spending. And it is a very comprehensive look at the Pentagon budget with many different suggestions on how to cut it, up to $350 billion. Well, we probably won't get $350 billion cuts this year, but there is so much in that budget that is wasteful. And none of the cuts that's proposed there affects the salaries of the actual enlisted people in our armed forces. It does not affect them, it affects the waste. Also supporting cuts to Pentagon spending through other legislative action and public statements. There's other bills out there focused on different things. There'll be amendments to the NDAA. Ro Khanna is targeting the ICBMs in the NDAA, new ICBMs. So there's many different ways of opportunities for the Pentagon budget to be cut. And also with coronavirus legislation, that's another opportunity where Congress can oppose funding for the defense industry and moving the money to help people during this virus, the pandemic. And also, this has been talked about every year for many years, is eliminate the OCO slush fund. And that has quite a bit of support, but we don't get real movement on it. We need to get real movement on it. And in this moment in time, people are looking at ending the militarization of the police, and there's money involved in that, as we noted. One thing when you're talking to your Congress member, check to see if they co-sponsored this George Floyd Justice and Policing Action, HR 7120, which does address the military surplus program to some extent. it's more of a reform package, but it's a very long bill with a lot of text, modifying legislation, and has some good things in there. It's a much better bill than the Senate version, 3912, S3912, but check to see if your representative is on there. There, I think I counted 230, 200 or 230, I can't remember, but it has a huge number of people supporting it in the House. There's two other bills. There's other things going on, but I wanted to highlight two bills that we could ask our New York representatives to co-sponsor. HR 7221 was recently introduced by AOC. It would prohibit law enforcement officers from using chemical weapons, tear gas, for example, in the course of policing activities. That's a very important one. Chemical weapons are prohibited in war. They should be prohibited in any kind of domestic policing. That makes no sense. The other one I recommend you looking into with your rep is HR 7143, another one that was introduced by a New York State Representative, Nydia Velasquez, to completely eliminate the 1033 military surplus program under Title 10. So those are things we could be asking for related to the militarization of police. So, you know, how do we do this? We contact our senators and representatives, and we have many examples of people on this call who do that. And there's the Congressional Switchboard, which is always an easy way of contacting your Congress member. And there's so many other ways of getting the message out through letters to the editor, tweets, Facebook posts, and you can use many different slogans, the money for healthcare, not warfare. Somebody mentioned there's a public citizen is taking on the project of the Pentagon budget, and they're doing something where people say the Pentagon budget is too high because, and then everybody fills in the blank. So maybe we can think of why the Pentagon budget is too high and fill in the blank for ourselves and use that as a social media campaign. There's many grassroots campaigns. We're New York City and New York State, and we have a lot of things going on, as you know, in every community. There's the Move the Money New York City campaign. There's Code Pink's Divest from the War Machine, the Poor People's campaign, and the Moral Budget, the Don't Bank on the Bomb campaign, and Global Days Against Military Spending. That's just a quick list. There's more. And you can create your own campaign, and I see New Yorkers doing that. You can make your own lobby day. I listed some priorities which I can cut and paste and put it in the chat, but there's many resources. But I will say it's the local information about what's happening in your community, where are the contractors, and giving alternatives to military contractors' business for jobs that really help the planet. So I think the local aspect is the way to go. So I am going to stop sharing. I am going to unmute everybody. Sorry for unmuting everybody, but I'm unmuting you. And what I would like to suggest, unless Andrew or Nick have another suggestion, is to find out if people want to have a conversation. You could put your hand up. There's a way of putting your hand up if you press participants and you go to the bottom of the list, you'll see something called raise hands. That's one way to do it. That may be the best, because then you don't have to keep your hand up. And we could continue the conversation and maybe find out what you're doing and what, if you have any questions, maybe somebody on this call can answer them. I know that there were some things in chat, but maybe it's a little hard for me to look at all of that. So what I'm going to do is I see a hand up from Carol, and you can unmute yourself. Okay, so I'll take a stack. So I see Carol, Rachel, and Jack. That's my first stack. Then we'll get the next three. So Carol, you want to go?
Sure. Excuse me, it's Andrew. I can't do the online stuff. Can I get in line?
Yeah, definitely. I've got you after Carol, Rachel, and Jack, then Andrew. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
I'm wondering about supporting the various legislative visits with major phone banks, a lot of phone calls, and just wondering what timing would work best from a statewide perspective.
I just muted myself.
Tom, I had to mute you, so I think we need to get Carol's question again.
Okay, and maybe I'll make more sense this time. I'm wondering, I know that a lot of legislative visits are coming up in the near future about the NDAA and about the Pentagon budget, and wondering about supporting them with a lot of phone calls, and just wondering about the timing on what timing would work best, or if it really matters, because it would be nice to just get a whole bunch over a course of a certain period of time. And we would certainly do our part in getting that to happen.
Okay, so I'll just take those 4 questions and then we'll move on. So next, Rachel.
Hi, Hi, I'm Rachel Clark, Veterans for Peace, Chapter 34, New York, and also a member of Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World. Recently, last couple months, I've traveled to upstate New York at least 7 times. I drove all the way closer to Canadian borders and the different parts of upstate New York, and those very unique and indigenous sound like name of places sounds getting more and more familiar to me, and I can image, the area when I saw those names, and it is unbelievable, beautiful places. I've seen many Amish people, Mennonite people doing very, very sustainable traditional farming, and also you can buy very good fresh produce and organic meat. Okay, we're talking about somehow dismantle military factories which are employing a lot of local people. Okay, and I would like to say, if they lose that kind of job opportunities, what else? And for city people, what we can do is to make much stronger pipeline between local farmers and buy their produce directly, more frequently, in much bigger quantity, so that they can realize that they do have amazing, produce to sell, and that they don't have to waste anything surplus, and a lot of great way to stimulate their local economy so that they don't lose their high school kids to military, they don't have to lose their parents to those factory assembly line. I think what we can do is not only politically, but as a stimulate local economy so that they can participate in this, capitalistic system, as they keep their very, very traditional, sustainable way of living. I think we should think what else we can, and what else we can do together, and I would like to invite many people who wants to go to upstate. I'm going frequently, so please let me know.
Okay, Rachel, that's great. Jack.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm going to be leaving right after this because actually I'm not in upstate New York. I'm down at the Outer Banks right now with my family. Grandchildren are going to be waiting for me to help with the barbecue very shortly. But I think what you're doing is great. And my main point, Sally, is that what you are doing needs even greater solidarity with the various groups, especially Reverend Barber's Poor People's Campaign. The Poor People's Campaign outlines very specifically where militarism hits in all 50 states. And of course, your note about 11% coming from New York State is not a shocker to all of us who know that what New York contributes, in tax monies to the U.S. government, with very little coming back except jobs. And Schumer knows that, and that's Schumer's point, that every job that he can get military line in upstate New York is fine with him. So if we work in solidarity with Reverend Barber, with Code Pink, which is, we've got to work, the co-director of Code Pink is from Ithaca, New York, Ariel Gold. She was on our call to Schumer and to Gillibrand, rather, not to Schumer. She is important. All of the groups, Veterans for Peace, of course, which I'm a member of, and I'm also a member from St. Freeze, the Peace Action for decades. We've really, the main point is we've got to come together. And I think that Reverend Barber is at a point now where we've got to support him in what he's doing, because he's worked so hard over the last 5 or 6 years. And now is the time. Now is the tipping point where if we could support him and what, racism has taught us about justice, then I think we're on the right track. So thanks very much. I appreciate it. And I'm going to enjoy the sun and the surf and say thanks again. Okay?
Oh, thanks, Jack.
All right, bye now.
Andrew?
Yes, amen to those last two callers, both, Jack talking about war resistance, and also I didn't quite catch her name, talking about going upstate and supporting the local economy. Being a resident of upstate myself, really, amen to that. Here's an example. We're talking about military contractors. You mentioned some of the big names and how much money gets tossed around. But in my county, actually up by Woodstock, there's this quiet little firm, and I know 10 years ago it was called Rotron. And I think it's changed its name. It's got a nice, quiet, back in the woods campus, and they make fans and other rotary devices. Well, it turned out back then they were making some pretty important pieces of drone manufacture. So they were, in fact, thereby a military contractor, but you wouldn't know just by the name or anything else. There must be a lot of these quiet little operations that are like subcontractors to the big guys. Over.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Andrew. So I see Eleanor's hand up, and Carol, did you raise your hand again? I'm not sure. So Eleanor, you want to go ahead? I think you have to unmute.
It's at the bottom. I got
Yeah.
it, Sally. Thank you. You have presented some marvelous information. I consider myself as an activist that's always been anti-war, and I'm saying hi to Nick and all the people, Rachel. It's that information. I'm so tired to drive. Yeah, I can't go, darling. Sorry. That I'm sorry. Excuse me. My daughter just stepped in. That information has to be. I want to put it with what the gentleman, I think Jack, was saying. You are in a special, my understanding is Peace Action is in a very special relationship to having these resources, the knowledge, the people that know how to get this information. If I may be rude enough to say, it really hurts me that so much time would be spent with Congress when, Sally, you've said clearly for years and years and years, and me too, I'm 75 years old. I've spent most of my life in the anti-war movement. We've got the wrong target. the wrong target. The right target are the activists, the kids that are in the line of fire right now. When you mentioned, you said, yes, they brought up the issue. What did it take to bring up that issue? It took blood, death, murder. We're much too calm when we go to Congress and try to convince people whose career is dependent upon following the rule, and they give you a crumb, and it's painful. It's really painful when I know people have died. I think the other person who spoke about the Black Agenda report, I want to see Peace Action doing very much more cooperative work with the activist groups that are, they're called the left, the Marxists, the radicals. They are the ones who really have the youth, I feel, and even Reverend, I was on the Poor People's Campaign. That was the first time in my life I ever got arrested. It didn't go anywhere. They just put handcuffs on me and took my name, and it got dismissed. And, I have to admit, when I see these young people in front of armed police, it's terrifying. It's really terrifying. So unless we unite much more, Peace Action's resources, knowledge, your years of going to Congress, I believe, in my humble opinion, should be shifted to working much more with the radical, so-called radical left, with those activist groups, because without that, the system runs. You said it. It's all, I know, Syracuse. I grew up in Jordan, New York. It's a stone throw away from the base, and all the work that's been done and all the people who spend their time and money and resources, we have got to figure out how to educate these young people. The biggest problem they have, I'm sorry, I'll just finish. It's not an organized movement. It's a spontaneous movement that came from a lot of pain, but there will become leaders who will step forward. There are leaders within there. It's just like the Occupy movement. Everyone was so excited about that. I was in Iran at that time watching it on Iranian TV and like, oh my God, what's going on in my country? That's so exciting. Only to see it totally dismantled. And that's because there has to be more unity with the activist groups and community than with going to Congress. And I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eleanor. So I'm not sure I have the order right. I'm going to just start with people who haven't spoken yet. So Tom, Sylvia, and Carol. Okay, Tom, you have to unmute.
I'm trying.
You got it. You did it.
I have a poor connection, unfortunately, in my house. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let me just share the video for a second. Or at least I'll try.
Yeah.
I just want to pick up on the last part of Sister Omani. That's exactly what we're trying to do with the Move the Money campaign in New York City. We're reaching out to community groups. We're reaching out to communities of color. We're doing that through unions that will cooperate with us. For example, 1199. We keep hoping for the nurses to get more involved. They're supporting it, except that they are frontline workers. It's very hard for them to do the little thing we're asking right now, which seems almost ridiculous compared to what they're doing. We have a postcard campaign. We get out there, we talk to people on the street, we talk to people in meetings. We try to get out to community meetings wherever we can. It's hard. There's a real problem with the so-called peace movement. I'll put it in blunt terms, it's too damn white, and it's also too damn old. And so we're trying to shift that. But I have to say, Sally has done fantastic research in presenting these slides. I hope they will be shareable with, thanks, Sally. Those are definitely the kind of slides I can use once I get back out into what I call 3D land. It's very hard doing this virtually, but this is a good, a good way to go for the time being. I'll stop there, but I just want to say there are some of us really trying to work locally. We believe that we're not going to solve this real soon, but that we've got to get to the, I call them the junior politicians, the ones who eventually will rise up into Congress, while we're also putting pressure on our current congressional delegation. I don't want to create a false dichotomy. We still have to do the work at the congressional level, but if we really are serious, we've got to be base building at the local level. I really do believe that that old bourgeois politician from Massachusetts did have part of it right. All politics is local in many respects.
Thanks, Tom. So Sylvia?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Eleanor said. I agree totally that we need to align ourselves with these, quote, radical groups or more progressive groups, Poor People's Campaign, and I'm trying to think of groups, but anyway, but I don't think you give up on Congress. Congress is changing. We're getting a lot of young, more progressive Congress people. And I don't think you give up on it. Like I happen to, I have a congressman up in Columbia County, Antonio Delgado. And I think he's a very good, a wonderful human being, and he cares a lot about people. He's not that strong yet on national issues, but I think we need to lobby and get him there so he understands that his local constituents care a lot about peace and war no more and all that stuff. So I just don't want to give up on Congress. But it's true, we should align with Code Pink and poor peoples and all that, but don't give up on Congress.
Okay, so Carol?
Has anyone not spoken yet? Because this will be my second time.
I think I didn't see, oh, Nydia. You want to go before? Go ahead, Nydia.
I'm sorry, this is Barbara too, if I can also get on stack when
Okay.
convenient.
Okay.
And Andrew would like to get back on when it's possible to have another turn.
Okay, so I've got Nydia, Barbara, Carol, and Andrew?
Andrew.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Nydia.
Okay, I'll be brief. First of all, Sally, thank you so much, because I think of myself as fairly sophisticated about what is happening, and I learned so much. I had no idea we had that many bases in the state. And so I would like that information to be available that other people can draw on. That's one thing. The other thing is to say that I agree with what Ellie said, but we have to be able to function on several levels, whether it's Congress, whether it's local, whether it's supporting the young Black Lives Movement. And also, I've always felt very strongly that it's up to New York State. I really think that we carry a tremendous burden. I've lived on both coasts. When I was in Santa Monica, I worked with Tom Hayden on rent control issues. I have a sense of California. Some of my family still lives there. New York has to lead the way. We are closer to Washington. We've got all the concentration that you don't have in California. California is too sprawling. So I really hope that we will lead in whatever way we choose to, but that we will lead the way for this country to see that time is running out. We got to do something. Yeah.
Thank you. Barbara?
Hello, am I coming through?
Real well.
Oh, great, okay. So this is Barbara Kidney from the New York State Greens for Peace Action and chair of Hudson Valley Green Party and candidate for Assembly District 101 in New York State, putting in a plug. Yeah, I just want to comment on Antonio Delgado. I think he's a real chameleon. I think he's very personable, has great interpersonal skills, but he plays to the crowd, and he's very good at telling you what you want to hear, basically. I don't think, based on his actions in Congress, that he has backbone when it comes to promoting peace and ending war or for that matter, ending fracking and other toxic fuels and promoting sustainable green energy. So I would say be very wary of him, and, you know, don't be charmed, because he is very charming, but he doesn't have the backbone, you know, in terms of actions from what I've seen from his voting record. I am one of his constituents. All right, thank you. Over.
Oh, thanks, Barbara. Okay, Carol, you're somewhere here.
Yes, I am here. Although I saw Nick raising his physical hand a second ago. Nick, did you do that?
Well, we'll put Nick down, but go ahead, Carol.
Okay. I wanted to comment on what both Sylvia and Eleanor said, which I was very rich. And actually, everything everyone has said has been very, very rich. So thank you. And that is, I'm not usually a legislative person, particularly. And to me, it's all about the moments and what you can do with them. And I am seeing it in a very tactical way right now, rather than sort of a lifestyle or as a, you know, things, this is how you make change happen no matter what's going on kind of way. But now is a moment with people on the streets and people going into Congress, states, local, things can change with enough pressure from all directions. It, you know, the combination of the streets and the legislative can work, or at least it can nudge. And to me, usually we don't have this situation, and usually it feels kind of, to be totally honest, futile, and I'd rather use my energy in other ways. But this time feels like a little different, not only because of the streets, but because of COVID, which is, I think, when we talk about the money, you know, because we've talked about, how long have we talked about the money, right? And when we talk about the money, people do not have a visceral feeling to it. Nobody knows what $1 trillion means. Nobody knows what $1 million means. They know it's a lot, and then they kind of go about their business because Congress seems so immutable. And now people have a different sense of it because of COVID and the money they're getting and the money that's needed for COVID and the money that's needed to help jobs and all that. And the money, and people, I think, also have a gut feeling about the money has to come from somewhere. Well, where's it going to come from? And under the current administration, it's probably going to come from, in my view, privatizing whatever he could privatize, which means privatizing schools, privatizing parks, privatizing national parks, privatizing everything, which I personally feel is part of the agenda out there anyhow, to take away the public space. So I think between Black Lives Matters, the streets erupting, and COVID, we have a tiny little window that could actually, something could potentially, like at the state level, a lot has happened around police issues very quickly. At our city level, things are happening very quickly. It is possible, although much more difficult, but it's possible in a way that it's usually not possible, in my view, to do it at the federal level. And I'm not saying that it always will work, but this is a moment where I'm willing to put some energy into a tactic that I usually don't put energy into, because it just seems like all these forces coming together could make something happen. So that's it.
Thanks, Carol. I just want to ask if somebody hasn't spoken that would like to speak. I just, before we go, there's some people who've spoken already want to speak, but I just want to offer anybody who hasn't spoken a chance. Oh, okay, Frank, right?
That's right. Frank Broadhead from Southwest Westchester, and a member of Concerned Families of Westchester. I hope we have some good news today. We have an election today, and the polls indicate that Jamal Bowman will beat Elliot Engel. And, you know, the world is now... The world now is something that you don't want to make predictions more than about a minute and a half ahead. but he was up 11 points the other day. This would be an enormous victory. Engel is simply a terrible human being when it comes to war and peace, and it's long overdue that he's out. This would be a great moment, and his replacement is a really decent guy. I'd just like to say, I think that reflecting some of the comments earlier, that in part, Bowman's victory is a result of this particular moment of the uprising of Black Lives Matter. Bowman is Black. And not least, perhaps, the liberation of young people from college and their campuses back into their communities where they can be political activists in the real world instead of just occupying a dean's office or something. There's been about now 2 months down here in Southwest Westchester of a real political revival. Our group is 19 years old and we haven't seen such excitement since 2003. So it's very rejuvenating. So that's, in my opinion, very good news for today.
Okay, I just want to take a time check. It's 5 to 7. I think we should, if we could go to 7:10 if, do you want to vote on that? Like, if you want to stay till 7:10, raise your hand.
2 hands raised here. That's Andrew.
Okay, well, feel free to leave at 7, but we'll plan on ending at 7:10. And I have another person who hasn't spoken, A. Young, and let me make sure did I miss anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Because I think we want to hear from you if you haven't spoken. We'll write up some of the notes a little bit if, you know, just, I did record this. I hope, does anybody have a problem with that? Because I can share the recording with you so you can hear people. All right, so A. Young, can you unmute yourself? And yeah, you're unmuted, you're fine.
Just hello, everyone. My name is Ayeon Choi. I'm a Korean American and living in New York City. I am really grateful to have been a part of this webinar. Sally and I worked together on a related but different issue, which is peace in Korea. And for most of my life, until just recently, I have never been involved in so many life-changing issues as an activist. I am normally a very quiet person. I've been an advocate for many things, but being an activist really is a new experience for me, and I am so grateful to know Sally, and through her to know the rest of you in time. And these are points of information that she shared tonight, which I would like very much to share with others. And I am grateful to have learned about the whole issue of military spending, and whether we call it defense spending. I don't know the difference between defense and offense spending. A lot of things to get to understand better. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ayeon. So I know Andrew wanted to speak.
Yes, still does.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Well, first of all, just a note of hope here. Nick and Barbara and I, and maybe some others on the call, were at West Point. I guess that was Saturday before last when Trump was there. And there was over 300 of us at the front gate. And here's what I wanted to say about that. There were a lot more young people than personally I expected. There were a lot of people of color, and there were various issues such as Black Lives Matter, but also LGBT, advocates. It felt like a real coming together of different issues in one sort of melting pot of concern and protest. And since you know, some of the other callers have been calling for more like linking up of different efforts in different groups. That was a good sign that maybe it is in fact happening, and the more the better. But the other thing I want to say is, being ancient myself, and being actually Canadian, I was still in Canada in the 1960s when all the stuff about Vietnam was going on. And I got to make a lot of friends with Americans who were draft dodgers, deserters, or just had to get the hell out of the States while all that was going on. My brother-in-law is one, married my sister, lived a great life. But here we are. And, you know, are there any monuments or anything for people who were protesting the war, young people who got out? It seems almost shameful to say that you were a draft dodger back then or a deserter. And I just regret that. It makes me feel like something that was really happening in the 60s that really called military and militarization into question just faded away. And so here we are today. Now, you know, it makes me think that the things people have had to say about we need a whole big system change, we need to unite with the real lefties, I think there's some good grounds for, you know, for saying that. I don't want to have any triumphs we make today just be as temporary as the triumphs of the anti-war movement in the late 60s and early 70s. I want it to be for good, and I'd love to know how to do that. Anyway, over. And thank you, Sally, very much for this. And you and I guess I have to thank Nick too. A lot of the people on the call, I think, were mainly due to your efforts.
Well, thank you very much. You know, maybe it's a good time to end this, unless I see some people's hands up. I wasn't sure if you all have spoken before. Maybe, do you think we should end it now? It's 7:02 and no? Okay. Okay. I see Tom, I see Eleanor, and I see Carol. So Tom, you go first.
Okay, thanks, Sally. You're going to hear some sound effects in the background. It's 7 o'clock and people are making noise in support of our hospital workers. A couple of people I think talked about, this is a crucial moment out on the street and potentially, you know, even in the halls of Congress. I am thrilled to learn that Congresswoman Velasquez has put forward a resolution to end the Pentagon's 1033 program. I think that is incredibly crucial that we get behind that on every level, locally all the way up to Congress. We need to educate people about that program. Again, most people heard about it a little during Ferguson and then sort of forgot. That's the one where they get all the heavy duty, free military equipment, free military training of the police. And that is a giant demand coming out of the street protests to end the militarization of the police. So I want to just make a special plea that we deal with that one. It's a great opportunity to make new friends, you know, among those who are already protesting.
Good point. Thank you, Tom. All right, so I don't see any other hands. Rachel, you want to close us out? Go ahead.
Thank you. It's been an amazing experience, and I've learned a lot from your research and report. Thank you so much, Sally. And I would like to add that whereas 50 all states have so many weapon assembly factories, 80 to 90% of weapon parts come from Asia, including Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, you name it, okay? And there are so many Asian corporations who make money from U.S. weapon industry. So that's another area we have to get together and make more solidarity with Asian nations activists. Okay,
Yeah.
that's one thing. Another one is actually this is kind of handkerchief that I'm wearing now. So you can make a mask cover and you can put it on your chest like this, or you can do whatever. This is pretty versatile, and the Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World has two designs of handkerchiefs. One is just a weapon in a garbage bin, okay? And the weapon in the garbage bin to which dog is peeing, okay? These are available. So if you can donate us means Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World, we can give you this free gift for $5 donation. Thank you.
And how should they reach you, Rachel?
Email or text message, whatever.
Okay,
So
can you give your email, maybe put it in chat or say it?
Sure, thank you.
If it's easy, you can also say it.
Not easy, sorry.
Okay.
I cannot type.
All right. Oh, okay, we've got one more person who's really going to close us out. This is Nick Wodron. Please unmute yourself and go for it.
Yes, Sally, I wondered, I had to leave for a moment, and I wondered if you had given people information about what they can do in the next few days to support what Peace Action is doing. I think you may have covered that, and if so, I appreciate that this is a key moment for people to make calls around what you're working on with Peace Action.
Yeah, I did put something up. I'm wondering if could everybody take a minute and put their emails in the chat? I will send you the presentation, and also I can also share with you the policy briefings that we're using. Peace Action is in the middle of National Lobby Days from June 19th to June 29th. We have a meeting. We had a meeting today with Representative Max Rose. We've had a meeting with Maloney. For New York, we're trying to get as many as possible with the senators and everything, and we're using these policy briefings. And like Eleanor says, are we going to get anywhere? Well, we will find out. It is good to know where our money is going. It is good to make some noise and educate ourselves. So I do sometimes agree with you, Eleanor, that what the hell? Why can't we do anything about this? Persistence is worth something. In other areas, maybe it will be worth something here. And, I feel committed to keeping the struggle going, watching what the elected officials do. They are accountable to us. It's our money, it's our government, and we should be holding their feet to the fire.
Thank you, Sally. Great job.
All right, thank you, everybody. I kind of know some, if you got your email in there, I hope you got a chance to put it in. I'm going to close us down and thank you all so much.